My first ever Japanese white pine, fully wired, candles up, repotted in September. How did I do? Did I take it from this and produce this? And I bet you want to see the journey. So stay tuned, grab a coffee, grab some crumpets, because that's a very English thing to do, or your equivalent, because we're going to have a bit of fun watching me toil. But you're not going to see too much wiring, don't worry. Morning, it's Xavier, and welcome to a bonsai retreat. And it is definitely a treat today because we're going to hit the Japanese white pine. And I've talked about this many times. You'll probably be aware from videos last year that it's not been well, and this is now 3 years in this much deeper ceramic container, all for the purpose of recovery of the roots. And I think you'll agree, looking at that is definitely a bouncy, healthy white pine. And I've got the unenviable task now of trying to wire it, and I've got to get the wiring coils in the right direction, which means I've got to know which way I'm going to be positioning all these different branches to form nice tight pads. I'm not an expert. This is probably the second time I've ever wired this, and I'm certainly not going to bore you by going into a detailed examination of wiring. Apart from the fact that I'm not an expert, as I've just said, there's much better videos out there that'll probably take you through that in detail. So what I intend to do this morning is, hey, show you the pot it's going to go into. Do you want to see the pot? Ta-da! And Dan, if you're going, oh no, not an olive oval pot, it's an oval by the way, that's what it's going to go in. And I'm going it because I like the way that matches the dark green of the needles, and I think it works well with the craggy bark. So that's what it's going into. Not a difficult decision because that's what it was in before, and I quite liked it. So I'll just have to put the stuff in the bottom there and all that usual grubbings and gubbings. Why am I wiring it first? Because it's nice and solid in there, and when you wire, you give it a lot of handfuls, and you want it to be secure. So I'll get all the wiring done. Chances are I may even do the branch placement and everything, and the final action I do will actually be the repot, because that should be the most straightforward and simplest. If the root systems recovers, I think it has, it's already going to be a pretty good shape, so it will just be a case of plonking it down in its new soil, so to speak. And unless I do something horrendously wrong, or I think of something very funny to say, you'll see this very soon wired up. And just to give you an idea of what I mean about direction on the wire, I've got this wire coming from around here, it's going around this way because I'm going to be bending in the direction of the coils to get that way and up. Now the other thing you remember is you have enough wire. First of all these little areas here, clean out. Anywhere in the crotch, just clean out, because that's just going to get in the way of the wire. So clean those out. And a lot of these are second year needles now, and they will just fall anyway. So we clean all those areas out, and if you have a look in there, we've actually got two junctions there. So I want to have those pointing up. And as I say, there are people who do this an awful lot better than me, but what you do want to try and do with my clumsy great fingers is at least give yourself underneath. Have a look under there. I've got that looped up underneath the ball, the bud, so that I can push it upwards, so that when I've finished with the final positioning of it, they will be pointing up. So by having that bit of wire right at the end, you can cup the base. And then again, moving some aside, wire loosely around. And what you want to watch out for, and this is the same for all of them, is all around this, there's like here, little buds here. Clean out all the old needles, and you've got to be a bit careful. You don't want to knock that bud, because that could be the future, but also if you look, there's a bud there, and there's also a bud on the top. So there's a few options there, but What I need to do is try and clean up in between, so that when I put the wire under there, it sits properly. There we go. And then you've also got to be careful not to actually knock the bud off. So it is a delicate thing, and it's not something I can concentrate on while I'm also talking, which is why you won't see much of it. But that's the principles: cleaning up where you've got needles you don't want and where you want to put the wire. And sometimes you do knock off new buds, but that's the risk. So there's that one there, that's clean, and I'll wire those up. Very hard. I'm trying to keep it so that you can see what I'm doing without actually making the wiring more difficult for myself. I'm just going to form a bucket under it. So I've wired those two to those two pairs. Now what I'm going to do is put more wire on between this one and this one, so that will form the first pad group. I'll go around and do the same with these ones. Again, watching out for little bud points. There's, I don't know if you can see here where my finger is, there's two little buds there and a bud there. They're going to be the future of the tree, but they're not the future now. So I need to get these twisted and orientated, and so I can form a nice pad on it. So in essence, that's the slow, laborious job that I've got to do. I've got to be fully concentrating, hence it's not an ideal thing for someone of my skill level to be doing while I'm trying to talk. So apologies if you wanted to see loads of detailed wiring. Just as a reminder, got this tree. This was, in fact, I was one of those people who made that first massive mistake. Got this tree back in 2002, and I got the 20 larches first, which I was going to play with, but couldn't help it. I saw this one for the grand total of 40, I think it was £40. It was about half the size. And then, like all budding new enthusiasts, had absolutely no idea what to do with it and left it in its pot for 10 years, didn't touch it. I don't know if I've got some pictures coming up. They've certainly come up in earlier videos, but it's still with us. But yeah, it's not something I'd recommend, but hey ho, yeah, that's been alright. Anyway, let me get on with some wiring. Okay, well, I've wired out this whole branch. Now normally the rule is, well, normally what you do is you wire everything, which takes hours and hours and hours. But what I want to do is, before the lawn mowing all starts on this Sunday, is just show you wiring out one branch. Now the direction I've done is so I can produce pads. This first one here, which is one of the big ones, I want to be twisting around and bringing it up. Got a little one here, and what you want to do is the main branches first, and I just fill in the gaps basically. And there's no exact science to it, and as I say, I'm still pretty new to this, so some of you out there are probably flinching. Don't worry, I'm flinching too. But my main aim is to try and fill in the pads and have the needle pairs pointing upwards towards the light. Maybe take this one just down a little bit. What I'm trying to do is to create that pad in there so it's all flat and around the same. I know my description words are pretty poor, but hopefully you can see what I'm trying to achieve. You use the smaller pieces to fill in the central gaps that you have. And I'm also looking further inwards. There's a lot more smaller ones that I'm waiting to see bud out. And as I say, I'm definitely not an expert on this, but this is my first real attempt at doing some basic pad placement for a white pine, and to be fair, I'm happy. And the good thing about this wire is you will be able to continue to adjust as you go along. That's the sort of first pad. I know that probably wasn't the clearest, but as I say, it is my first time. I'll probably be adjusting these round where I can look properly without having the camera in the way. I'll come back to you when I've wired up and done probably 2/3 more of this tree, and you'll see what I'm doing. Make sure you wire all the branches, and make sure you've cleared it away properly, and you can actually have a good tweak around and get the positioning right. So I'll come back to you in a minute. Well, it's 3/4 of an hour later. The sun's doing the lawn mowing, but literally just to give you an update now before the rain comes in, and Alex is coming to visit as well. So I'll have Alex Braunton in the house. This is really hard, and I know again there'll be a few of you going, what have you done to it? There's the first pad there, and I've just set up this second pad here. So, and it's really hard to try and just layer either side of it, but certainly I'm really happy with this one. And this one, what I'm hoping is that there's a few buds further back, and with all these pines, you build them, so I'll let these come out, and then it means the stuff that's a little bit further back, the little small budding points, next year maybe I might be able to cut some of this rangy growth out here, knowing that the back budding has provided me something to bring it tighter and more compact. But you know, for a part-timer, I'm not too bad with those second pads. What scares me is that I've been out here for, say, well over an hour, and I've basically done 2 branches. That one at the back will be alright, but when we start getting up here, I might have to make a decision about losing one of these branches here, because we've got literally bar either side. But that'd be an interesting one whether I actually remove that whole branch there. I'm not joking, I've spent nearly 2 hours trying to just wire those 2 pads, and I don't know whether I'm going to take this branch off or not. I just need someone who's got a bit of knowledge, and you know me, there's nothing up there. I know Alex was supposed to come here soon, but I really could do with him coming. Talk of the devil, and we all know how much we want to see Alex. Let's bring him on and let him tell me what he thinks of this trash.
Hello, how are we doing? Oh, here we go, I'll just pop that there out of the way. Wow, this is looking quite nice, Xavier. 2 hours, I think that's a good effort so far on the branches. The pads are quite defined now, these 2 lower ones. A bit of work more to do at the top, I suppose. There's no branches on these, but I think that's going to look really nice when you're finished with it. Yeah, it's looking good so far.
Would you get rid of that? There's that issue with potentially a bar branch.
Yeah, up here. Well, it's difficult, isn't it, I suppose, because naturally the flow of the tree, the next branch would be this right-hand side.
Yeah.
But then this one, it would be a shame to lose this because that's a lot of space then. There's going to be a big gap. I don't know. Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, you could think...
Can I just ask you something? I thought you were a bit of a connoisseur of wine, and I thought when you said you were going to bring a bottle, there was going to be something decent. What is that? Côte de Rhône?
Yeah.
Is that Côte de Rhône?
It's a lovely 2022 French. It's I've already had some actually, but I thought you might like to finish it off. So I was just thinking, let's try and vision the tree without this branch, okay? So what do people use? A piece of paper or a rag or something have you got? Maybe we can throw over.
I'm going to need paper, but there's that rag beside you.
Oh, right. What?
The one that's the same colour as your shorts.
Okay, let's put this lovely dirty rag on the tree and we'll just try and vision what we're going to do with it. Wow, I don't know where to start with this, Xavier. What happened to it?
Well, I used to suck on it when I was a kid.
Oh my goodness.
In fact, that was my corner just there.
Oh.
And I blow my nose on that bit.
Oh my god, oh, no.
So we're not doing that then? No. Right, well, I've just waved Alex off. He doesn't have to put that wine back, you know. Something's going to need to be said to him. And if he can get some wine, if he get some decent stuff. Anyway, he did raise a very, very good point. And he's going to relate to something that's waggling here. But I'm going to wire everything out first before perhaps we look at that properly. But so now I've got this branch gone, this branch is done. I've now wired out this one here. And there's some, it's basic, but there's nice pad delineation, he says, knocking it. But what I did think I'd do is just talk to you about some yellow needles and stuff like that. There's not many on this one, but on my other one there's quite a few, so should we have a quick look at that? Oh, this as you well know, this will be the one that, in fact, I think you saw me do a repot on it earlier in the year, but I got this from Watston Bonsai last year, around this sort of time actually, and it's interesting. This one is shedding. We've got a few branches that we've lost, and there's only one thing to do when you've got that, is get rid of them. But I've got to do the wire to this, and I probably won't show that, but what this is great for is showing about these yellow needles. And I think the key thing I've learned is, so long they're not at the end, which is your newest growth, then what you're seeing is naturally the shedding of the second year, perhaps the third year needles. So there's nothing stopping you just going around and carefully removing them all, whether you shake them, and from that it tells you where you can wire and everything like that. So if you see yellowing needles, don't worry, now's the time to remove them. It's not looking like that by the time you've removed them, then maybe you do want to worry. But that's all this year's growth, perfectly set up to be wired, and I'll wire them so we get a nice pad like that. The tree is basically turning around saying, I don't need these needles anymore. A bit like my hair. That's my body telling me I don't need that hair anymore. Wouldn't mind, but I wish it wouldn't go off my legs as well. But I think we're going a bit deep here, don't you? Well, this has been an absolute adventure, and it's all wired up. There's some stuff to talk about on it, but we need to get out of this soil, and we need to do it quite quickly because up there is a lot of very dark clouds. So all I've got to wonder about is how easy this is going to be, with obviously upsetting all the wiring I've done. And although it may look like I'm being quite rough, I'm actually feeling with the hook, the bobcat hook, for any roots or anything that may get in the way. So there's a nice little lifting there. I'm actually going to lift that out without you seeing me doing it because the pressure would be just too much. There it is. Some nice roots under there. So all I'm going to do is very, very carefully tease that out and see what it looks like. And hopefully we are going to find a lot of beneficial fungus in there. And what is good to see is I definitely used a much better soil. And there's not tons of roots on this thing, and I didn't think there'd be tons, to be honest. Yeah, we've got a lot of that the beneficial fungus in there, the mycorrhiza. I definitely need to hurry because I can feel drops of rain. That's a lovely load of roots on there. Look at that. Much better than I had before. Okay. So that's the root growth that it had. Very happy with that. Should we get the tree to it? Okay, so that's where we are in the pot. It's going to be the front for now. Okay, so I've got basic top dress the soil in there. I'm now going to spend a few minutes gently putting it in there, and then I think we're going to be pretty close. I'll have a look at the wiring and come back to you. But there she is. For me, I'm absolutely over the moon. Well, it's done. That's the Japanese white pine, repotted, 70% pumice, 30% zeolite, which was my Akadama substitute. Also a little bit of carbonated carbon, the black stuff, in there as well. And that's the potting mix. I hope you like the pot that it's in. I think it really shows off on the green of the needles. I'm blown away. I'm blown. This is, and I will say it, although I wired this 5 years ago, in those days when I wired, I didn't realise there was a difference between pine and normal deciduous. So instead of having the candles pointing up, they were pointed out straight like that. So although I wired it, it really wasn't the first. This was my first ever attempt at wiring. It is certainly not perfect, and in terms of placing candles and creating pads, it's a reasonable first effort. I don't know, you tell me. It is the first time I've done it with pad placement. As you know, when Alex was here, he pointed out a glaring issue, and it's this one here, this branch here, which is a bar on this one here. There is a debate about whether we remove that whole section. I'm not going to put a white cloth over it because I only just wired it, so it'll all go to shop. The other reason is, whatever the decision, whatever you guys think, I won't do that sort of removal until this has been in this pot for a good 18 months. It needs to spend all its energy with all those needles, because the more needles, the more energy is going to be fed down to grow and re-establish that root system. And the root system is already, I saw, even with what I removed, is 100% better than it was when I actually took emergency repotting attention of it several years back. Basic line, I need those needles. And I also, interesting to say, didn't show you, but in just removing second and third year needles, I probably removed a third of the needles anyway. So even if that decision to remove that branch is one that you think's there to be made, it won't be sustainable if I do it now. So that won't happen now, but definitely your comments. I think Alex talked about lowering this branch down and trying to bend this further over. I'll be honest, this curve is a really, what is it, a 3. It's a bit of an odd one when you actually open it up and look at it, but this is the tree. It's over 50 years old, and I think now it's about doing stuff with it in its current form. I'm over the moon. I'm really happy with it. It's my first ever proper go with white pine. I've wired them all out. This is a bit thing, but what I'm hoping for, all the energy goes in, then over the next couple of years, what I'm looking for is some back budding. There are areas here, these ones here, where you've got candles in quite close, and you've got it in a few places here as well. So those are potentially the future of the tree, these candles here. But they've got to be allowed to grow. There's some other points going around the tree where there's also some nice candle placement, but it needs time. Just to give you an idea from looking down, I don't know how well you can see the wiring that's taken place. It took me over 5 hours. 5 hours of wiring. But I'm really happy. So, I hope you've enjoyed the journey. I'm 100% confident that potting it now and doing the work I've done is right. I'm also just as confident that to remove any of that growth now would be detrimental to the tree. So feed your comments in about what you would see done with it in a year or two's time, but join me and enjoy what's been achieved, because this is probably the pinnacle of what I've done so far. It even beats drilling 7 bells out of that privet stump. So from Xavier, over the moon with his Japanese white pine, looking at storm clouds rolling in, rain buffeting his greying hair, I'll say thanks very much, all the best, happy bonsai, God bless, cheers.